example, we bought icebreakers. They'd like to use them. We have 11 brand new icebreakers coming in. They'd like to use the icebreakers. They don't pay for anything. And they want to be treated like a state, but they're not a state. But they want to be treated like they're a state. And so we just can't do that anymore. We lose on average over the last 15 years, $60 billion a year carrying Canada. So we just can't do it anymore. We love the people of Canada. I don't think their representatives do an appropriate job. Maybe they'll change. I really don't know. I mean, it doesn't make much difference. But we can't let the whole Canadian thing has been going on for decades, and it has to come to a stop. So we're going to be doing tariffs on their cars that are coming in at a substantial level, because we want to make the cars here. We don't want if they can make their own cars if they want, and they can continue to make their cars for Canada. But we don't want them to make cars for the United States of America. It's very simple. Likewise, many other products. So the lake change, Lake of America, was something I've been thinking about for a long time, actually. As you know, we took something called the Gulf of Mexico, and we changed it, and now it's very routinely the Gulf of America. So if you think about it, we have a Gulf and we have a lake. Now all we need is an ocean. So maybe we'll have to change the name of the Atlantic and or the Pacific. Maybe we'll change it.
Why are you so focused on doing things like this towards America's allies instead of doing things that target adversaries?
The Canadian officials have treated us very badly. They're nasty people. They charge our farmers 400% tariffs. They've been doing it for a long time. And I had them figured out in my first term, and I did some pretty strong things and had it getting pretty good. And then the election was rigged, and now I'm coming back and doing it the way and finishing the job. But they treat us very badly. Canada treats us very badly. I would say that of all countries, as you know, we have President Xi coming in a couple of weeks. We deal with a lot of people. People oftentimes, they'll ask me, who's the worst to deal with on trade? And I said, that's easy, Canada. They are the worst to trade. And they feel entitled, and just we can't have that.
This show does not come with instructions. Think at your own risk. The Kate Daly Show starts now.
All right, welcome, Kate Daly Show. So happy that you are with us today. And of course, I've got a great guest. Dr. Avery Jackson is with me, and I also just want to extend a big thanks for tuning in and also catching this on replay, which is what most people do. And I also you can always catch the live stream at katedalyradio.com. It's like its own radio station. And then you can, which people have been doing all over the world for a long time. We're over 28 million views. And then, and listens, also you can catch this on YouTube, Facebook, Rumble, and X. And I appreciate all of you. And today's show, I'm going to have Dr. Avery Jackson. We're going to be talking about a lot of things that are going to blow your mind. And then I'm going to talk about nukes, the big headline today with Putin. I'm going to address that, the truth about that, the grid. We're going to talk about the grid. We're going to talk about so much today. And of course, that song that Elon keeps putting up, Sweet Land. I'll talk about that too. And of course, narratives. We'll talk about those too. So, jam-packed show today, and we were off the air yesterday, and I apologize, and we're back today. So here we go. But Dr. Avery Jackson is with me, and the book is actually, here we go, The God Prescription. He has written this fabulous book, Our Heavenly Father's Plan for Spiritual, Mental, and Physical Health. We're going to be talking about health. Yes, we're going to be talking about all kinds of things today. And of course, the brain, because a lot of people do not understand the brain and how it functions, and our own bodies. And I think since 2020, people are finally starting to kind of figure out that, maybe we ought to get back to actual health instead of the prescription pad of since the 1930s. Maybe it's time. And I think that's a great little mini revolution going on. So welcome to the show, Dr. Avery Jackson. How are you?
Hey, I'm well. Thanks, Kate, for having me.
Good. I'm so glad to have you. A neurosurgeon. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. So I'm from Detroit, Michigan. Mm-hmm. And at the age of 8, my grandmother, who's from Belize, had a stroke. So I asked the Lord, hey, Lord, how can I help people like my grandmother who have brain problems? And I heard inside him say, I want you to be a neurosurgeon. And I thought, I don't even know what that is. I looked it up. I said, I'll do it. 24 years fast forward through my training education, University of Chicago, Northwestern, Penn State, Wayne State, Medical College, Wisconsin, Milwaukee, went into neurosurgery. And now 24 years later, 10,000 surgeries and about 100,000 patients. Here we are.
Wow. Well, I'm you bring up so many good questions that I don't even know what to start with. But because you address a lot of what the brain does, but people have questions they probably don't even realize they have, which is kind of funny thing to say. But I do believe that we just do not understand a lot about our bodies, our brains. And so I wanted you to start with the building of our own health again, because people are not there's like this mini revolution going on, and I'm so grateful for it. People are finally starting to figure out, but there's also this deep brainwashing that's gone on in America for 70 years. So address this, please. I want to hear this from you.
Sure. Really, Kate, it starts as a spiritual battle, and people don't want to deal with that sacred cow, but they need to, because it's real.
Yes.
And so you've got good versus evil. You've got, God versus the devil. And so people will succumb to either spiritual force. And, we have the advent of the AMA. And from there, it was created for big pharma and the industrial medical complex. And so at the time, or at least now, we thought, hey, great idea, organized medicine. We're helping people. We're advancing in all these different areas and science and how we get data out. But we forgot to be historians, because when we're historians, we go back and look at in the 1900s, we find that homeopathic medicine was 1 in 4 docs were homeopathic. That is to say, they were more naturopathic in how they did things. They understood the immune system very well. And then fast forward, in the 70s and 60s, kind of the AMA really pushed the current academic environment, including how licensure and the whole 9 yards. And so now we're indoctrinated and educated as board certified, MDs into a world where basically we're very narrow-minded. We don't take into account risk and benefits anymore. We just say, this is the only way to do it. So now we're married to kind of the religion of medicine, and we're forgetting about the people. We're forgetting about, complications. We're forgetting about, God's nature and how he invented health and medicine. And now we're into like this space of like chronic disease and further away from some acute diseases. And we're just kind of like, oh, well, I guess that's the way things go. And it's like, are you kidding me? So it's I appreciate you. I appreciate your show and informing people and getting them to think and wake up and say, just be a critical thinker. Yeah. Even if you just do that, you'll start to realize that certain things just don't make sense. And when they don't make sense, then you need to ask critical questions. You need to challenge everybody. I've also learned that like when you really know the truth, you don't mind challenge. You don't mind answering tough questions, because you're trying to help people. And if that's truly your heart, then you're never going to be offended when someone asks you some question, even if it's kind of off color. It's like, so what?
So what?
Right?
Yep. Yeah. I'm so there with you. So here's the bigger looming question that I'm sure people out there have is, well, what changed you? Because most of the doctors I met when my husband was in the hospital, when all these things have gone down in our lives, they do not think like you. So what made you different?
Well, one was the fact that I had my faith as an origin. So, and I pray, and the Lord was really clear, I put you here, I can take you out. So that made it pretty easy to kind of, continue to my relationship with the Lord. But, I was thinking, Kate, just like every other MD until COVID, or just prior to COVID, my wife was a neurosurgery PA, Kara. We talked about like, why are they changing vitamin D, the ability to test vitamin D levels 8 years before COVID? We thought that was really odd. So it made it harder for us to look at vitamin D levels critically and then make sure that people are replenished. So that was something that kind of shocked us. And then COVID hit. And then after, you're like, oh, okay, that was part of the plan. Because even if we didn't know how to treat COVID, if we didn't know what it was, at least we would have looked at the vitamin D assays and said, hey, wait a minute, if for no other reason, let's make sure vitamin D levels are up to speed. And then we can trip over the fact that if your vitamin D level is low, then that's going to affect your immune system. It's going to affect your risk for cancer and all these other things, including having really bad outcomes with COVID. So, that was part of it. And the other part is that as we looked at what was going on, there was such a departure from what was quote unquote standard of medicine. That is to say, we never took orders from any governmental entity because we're board certified and licensed to treat the person in front of you. So that was the other thing that was super odd. Like, okay, let's just all listen and then let's turn our brains off, right?
Right.
And then the other thing was when people said, they said, just, go to the hospital and when you're turning blue, otherwise I don't want to deal with you, right? So the word of God says is that in the last days, which is what we're in, that men's hearts will wax cold and they'll become lovers of themselves. So we saw a lot of selfishness, and especially on the part of the physicians, because we were like, well, I don't want to be killed. I don't want you to touch my family. I want to keep my job. And therefore I'll do whatever anybody says because I'm controlled 100% by fear. And so I think that's what turned the corner. And when I presented as an expert witness for a House bill for the state of Michigan, Bill 4471, that was introduced by Rep. Sue Aller, I said, look, as an expert, that VAERS is real, the Nuremberg Code is real, and we broke all of it. And we are not going to support having people forced to take these quote unquote injections to go to work. This is stupid and ridiculous. And right after that, I mean, we got slammed by the CEOs of hospitals and our community. And now we're kind of bumping up against the religion of medicine and what that looks like in terms of a personality. And so all of that really got me angry. And I'm like, where is the patient in all of this? And we're supposed to serve people, but now we're more concerned about ourselves. And I think seeing that transition and having those conversations, that really kind of changed my perspective greatly. And then also my mother died during COVID, and that through that debacle, my grandfather did. And so now even more so having these sensitive conversations when people are basically like, I don't care and sue me if you want kind of an attitude. So that really got us saying, okay, well, clearly we know what we're doing now. We know who we're fighting. So we're going to do everything we possibly can, no matter how radical it seems, as long as we have God's interest and people's interest, then we really don't care. And so that led us on this journey to create the beginnings of a healthcare system, to say we need something radically different than what we started with. And we need to continue to kind of lean into who we are spiritually, lean into God, and do right by people.
Yeah. Amen to that. Amen to that. So, questions that you get about the brain are so intriguing. So and honestly, I don't see a lot of doctors leaning on God a whole lot. They lean on themselves as God, but not God. And so it's worrisome out there. And so when I hear a doctor do that, it makes me feel a lot better, believe me, because I realize it's just a nice thing to see somebody go, yeah, we have somebody else that we have to rely on here in this picture. But how does fear manifest with the brain? I can't wait to hear you answer this.
Yeah. So fear, so basically through our five senses, our frontal lobe, prefrontal lobe, cingulate gyrus, all these other structures in our brain through our five senses will kind of analyze all of the stimuli that we're experiencing in life from the time that we're a baby on. And then it, frontal lobe, as it develops, then we start to reason through it. Well, why is this happening? Is this good or is this bad? The fight or flight phenomenon, or freeze, by Walter Cannon, kind of gives us some clues into that. And then take it a step further, the work by Herbert Benson, a noted cardiologist who was the first person in the Western Hemisphere that said, look, when you get stressed, it's going to affect your physical body in all these different ways. So you got to take that into account. So now we're looking at our physical body, our emotional selves, and then you add faith, and faith in God gets you to build on your spiritual health and wellness. And all three buckets, spirit, soul, and body, found in 1 Thessalonians 5:23 in the Bible, those come together really well on this, plane of medicine and science. And so for me, it was pretty simple to say, okay, if I know that I have thoughts and I'm trying to control things that I can't, and I'm not asking for any other help because, of course, I know it all, then that's going to create a conundrum. And that conundrum is going to lead to more fear. And then that's going to manifest in really weird ways physically. Like, I believe most autoimmune disorders have a strong emotional component If you look at people's history, oftentimes they've had abuse, which we call adverse childhood events or ACEs, when they were younger or early adulthood. And then your immune system says, hey, I'm getting signals from the hypothalamus, which is the master relay system of the brain, that says that there's danger. And so I've got to attack certain parts of myself. And it just, we're all confused. And then these neurochemical signals come from the hypothalamus to the rest of our cells, and then they malfunction. But when you're calm, then all of that reverses. I mean, there's a cell danger response, for instance, that kicks in when you're really stressed out, but that cell danger response can calm down when you're more calm. So again, direct correlation with your faith in God and how you see the stress that we all face and the issues through your brain, and then the neurochemical response to your sympathetic, parasympathetic system, to your cells. And all of that comes down to relationship, right? So trust in God, trust in your faith and each other. And relationship is a huge part of that, right? And so that's kind of how it's connected. And so the God prescription, my book, kind of helps to walk through that for the individual, whereas the body healthcare walks through kind of collectively, what can we do now that we know what we know, to make a difference in creating a healthcare system that's based on love. It's based on caring for the individual, and it's not bound by big pharma. It's not bound by the bureaucracies and basically theocracies that are currently out there.
So really, truly, the brain, from what you're saying, the brain plays way more of a role in the immune system than we think.
That's right, completely. I mean, to such a degree. Think about this. You're being interviewed, you're stressed out, immediately your heart will start to race, your palms will sweat. So that tells you right there, there's a direct correlation between what you're thinking and perceiving and the physical attributes of your body, just directly. Okay. Right. And so that's why, the Word of God has been designed to help us say, look, I'm not by myself. And also there's a lot of wisdom in the Word of God. And that wisdom, as the word says, will guide you into all truth if you listen. And so your brain science goes right along with that lockstep, in terms of how your brain functions when there's a stressful event. Yes. And all the neurochemical pathways that are activated or deactivated based on what you're dealing with. And then also your past memories of good and bad events.
Boy, I don't think people realize that. I mean, the bigger role that plays. I think they, I don't see too many doctors that tie in the emotional aspects of our history, our lives, what we feel, versus the symptoms that crop up when our immune system is down. So even when you're like flying, you're stressed out, right? Well, people think they get sick from the airplane, but maybe it's the stress of flying. I don't know.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Well, they're interesting. If you look at, there's several different studies. Like one study looks at what happens when you're stressed in emotional, when you have chronic anxiety and depression. Right. It turns out that affects your natural killer cell and your immune system. And when your natural killer cell functions less well, then you're more likely to develop viruses and bacteria and have upper respiratory tract infections, for instance. Oh, wow. So direct correlation based on your emotional life and then how that affects your physical health and physical life, right? And again, you're a boxer in the ring. How do you win against your component? It's a psychological win, right? That's how most people will be defeated if they think that they're not going to win or they think they're going to lose. And so that's really part of pretty much everything that all of us do. And when we interact with people and have different issues that crop up, because all of us are going through things all the time, right? Yeah. And the issue is, how are you going to deal with those things? How is your brain going to deal with those issues? And how do you have good brain health? One of the best ways to have good brain health is to have people and your faith in your life that will help you calm down and put things into perspective. And as a doc, we learn none of that. Okay, so the traditional allopathic curriculum talks about who we are as a chemical, biological being, and we talk about homeostasis, which is the balance of all of our systems in our body, for instance, relative to the external world. And this is what Walter Cannon at Harvard presented to us. And then Herbert Benson at Harvard and the NIH kind of did more work on this. And that's where the white coat hypertension comes from. And but the point is that when we have relationship, when we're critical thinking, that will affect us, our brains, either way, either for good or for bad. And so that really tells us that we need to work on our spiritual lives and when we're, and who we are in Christ. And then that will affect our physical lives. What will that do? That'll make us nicer people. That'll make us laugh more. Studies show that laughter is hugely helpful. Even MD Anderson, Major Cancer Institute, implemented laughter classes to those who were undergoing radiation and chemotherapy for their for tumor and other chronic diseases they were dealing with, and noted that they had better outcomes when people laugh. Well, studies show that the average child laughs 365 belly laughs a week. The average adult over 30, about 10. Why? Because we have more responsibility. I get it. There's more stressors. So we got to find more ways to relax and calm down and to laugh. And that's where our faith comes in. When you know that you're not the only one in the universe, and that you don't have all the answers, but you know someone who does, Jesus Christ, and that you can rely on him and go to him. And then also to your brothers and sisters in Christ, that we're not alone. That makes a huge difference collectively in how strong we are. And that has an impact directly on our neurochemical selves and our brain. And it really informs every part of our body, as I mentioned before, in all of our cells. And so then to add to that, which is interesting too, Kate, you add vitamin D. I think about Cardio Miracle.
Oh, yeah, you take it too. I was going to ask you because I saw you talking about it.
Yeah. So it's huge, right?
Yeah.
So, and I'll just throw that in. So actually, I'm the chief medical advisor to Cardio Miracle. And I say that proudly because it's basically a powder, and it has 55 plus of the finest ingredients, and it has nitric oxide, and it really gives you all the nutrition that your body needs. But the nitric oxide in combination is amazing. So get this, Kate. The word says that laughter is like a good medicine, right? And when you laugh, you secrete nitric oxide, which is a very powerful anti-inflammatory agent that affects your immune system and your vascular health and tone and wellness when you're laughing. Well, the nitric oxide that's in Cardio Miracle helps to support that same process, which is fascinating. And so that's a big deal because it's something that you can take in powder form. I take it twice a day in water. And notice a huge difference. We've seen huge differences in how, as a superfood, it's helped blood pressure. It's helped people feel more calm. They sleep better. And so all of these aspects that's in Cardio Miracle, and that's a decision, right? I mean, we can take supplements. We can do alcohol. We can do all these other things that we think are calming us down. But when you take in real food, that is basically helping to support your body's immune system and other systems. It's like, why not do that?
Yeah.
And I mention that because the vitamin D it's bioavailable in Cardio Miracle, which is a big deal. I mean, so in Michigan, for instance, if you're darker skin, you're not getting as much sun. So the vitamin D that you might have floating around in your blood is not in the active form. So you can't really use it as well. But in Cardio Miracle, it is in the activated form, and so as soon as you take it in, it makes a big difference. And I'm putting that together with this issue about your emotional and mental health, because the two go together. When your studies show that your natural killer cells work less well when you have anxiety and depression, they also show that vitamin D, if you don't have enough vitamin D, that your natural killer cells work less as well. So now we're combining your emotional health and some of the things that you can do to help your physical health, and specifically as it relates to the natural killer cell and how that affects your hormones, that affects your immune system, and that affects even pre-cancer risks. So it's like all connected, right? And so take home, for me, if the two things if I could think about that would be a huge help for my health, my spiritual, emotional, and physical health. In a nutshell, it would be spend a lot of time with the Lord, and then laughter comes from that. And then the cardio miracle to keep my vitamin D and the other essential amino acids and other pieces, the L-arginine, all the other good stuff in my system for brain health and for my overall vascular health and body health.
I was just sharing with the audience, this is so crazy, but I do my blood work. I have my blood work done every summer. So I just had it done. And what's crazy is there's only one big change that I made in this last year, since last summer. Because I started taking it right after I got blood work last summer, and all my blood work always comes back with like lots of flags. And I'm dealing with a lot of stress with the show and a lot of research and late nights and nights until 4 a.m. And I knew that was probably wreaking havoc. Well, that has not stopped. The stress has only increased. But what's crazy is I just did my blood work, and I was just telling the audience this week that my blood work came back with 0 flags. I was just good to go on all the numbers, and I for the first time, and I'm trying to like scroll down and find the flags, and I'm like, there's no flags. This is so crazy. And that's the only big change I made. And my husband had the same experience. So when you mentioned high blood pressure, I was like, no way. So if you would have told me that, like, I'm sure there are people out there that don't believe me. It's fine. You not believe me, but it's true. And I'm sitting here smiling because I'm like, I was told that would happen, but I don't know if I really believed it, to tell you the truth. And this summer just sealed the deal for me. I was like, taking this for almost a year, I'm like, wow, what a change. Like, that's pretty huge. I almost wish I would have gone back and did my blood work like in December, just to find out. So I don't know. It was crazy. It was crazy, but it was proof.
Yeah, and if I could add, so I'm the principal investigator in a recent study, a human study, looking at people in my region. We gave them Cardio Miracle over 90 days. We checked their blood work in the beginning and then at the end. Now, disclaimer, part of that time was over like 2 holidays. So, but even with that, we saw a substantial improvement in their vitamin D levels. We saw that their overall health, mental health surveys were statistically significantly improved, which is fascinating to me, because normally we talk about when you put something in, your body, we go to all of our vital signs, we go to our blood labs, our inflammatory markers, but we don't often talk about like, what's your general overall sense of well-being or not.
Yeah, that's true.
And this study really brought that out, and which was really impressive. So again, first, just from a fresh study that was done, it'll be published pretty soon in some peer-reviewed journals. That was really kind of neat to see as a principal investigator. And I was blinded to the data, so I couldn't see it until after the statistician looked at it. And then I was able to interpret it and write the paper. And I was just blown away by what I saw. And this was for people, some of the people in the study were in their 20s, all the way up to people in their 80s, men and women and different backgrounds. So it was a kind of a neat little study, but it really gave some insight in terms of how it's affecting people. And many people had decreased blood pressure as well as other changes that were really pretty neat.
That's so crazy. Okay. Yeah. So I have more random questions to ask you too. All right. So number one, does our brain know if we are awake or asleep? I would think yes, because you're asleep. It's REM. That has everything to do with the brain, but maybe I'm wrong.
Well, and I would say that you're actually very much kind of right on. So we have more cues that we're awake because of locomotion, for instance. We can tell when we're doing certain things. However, your body and your physiology will respond when you're asleep, just like you're awake. And that's why with people, they're running from a lion or something, and they're like, they wake up with their heart rates, really fast, and they're in a sweat. So when you're sleeping though, it's really hard to tell oftentimes that you're sleeping. Okay. And that's because of what we know in our dream data. And, you go through about 3 to 4 cycles of sleep, and there are 4 stages of it. So that says a lot, because then you start to think about, okay, what's my reality? and it's really based on my perception. So there is the truth. There's a truth based on the Word of God that applies to everybody for all time, whether we agree or not. But then there is my perception, and my perception is filtered through my experiences throughout my entire life. And that's where we get into adverse childhood events. And there was a study done by the CDC looking at about 17,000 people, and they took them through this survey. And the ones who had this 10-question survey, the ones who had 6 positive responses to negative events in their lives, went on to have major health issues, physical health issues, more likely to have heart attack, more likely to have anxiety disorders and other disorders based on their perceptions. So fast forward, your perceptions when you're sleeping and when you're awake are all informed by your past history and your memory. And that's an area called the hippocampus. Is one of the areas that help to package memory in your brain. But you kind of do live in your head in that sense. And I know that in the past people would say, oh, it's all in your head. But they don't realize how it really is in our head for the most part. And that's why our perceptions, correcting negative perceptions is important. And then also, think about what you're thinking about is extremely important, which means you're going to need some outside, right? You need some outside help to hit those blind spots, because otherwise you could be off by miles in terms of what's accurate and how things will affect you and they won't affect you. Like, for instance, there was a study done looking at these students who were in medical school, and basically it turns out that they found in asking these questions that about 90% of students were worried about something that could happen in the past that actually that never happened. Okay, only 10% of the time did what they were worried about actually happen, but yet they ruminated over these things that could happen that didn't ever happen. And that's partly because of how they were raised and their experiences as a child and what they've been exposed to. And, personality factors into that. So we have to get back to that place. And so again, appreciate your show and giving people real data, real information that can help their lives is so important. And then also the other issue is, who do you listen to and why? Do you eat any fruit? Are they just talking whatever, but it's not helping you. It's not helping other people. So I think that's really important. And I appreciate your show for that.
You bet. So if you tell yourself you're tired all day long, you will be tired.
You will definitely be tired. What you believe yourself, right? And the Word of God says, out of the issues of your heart, your mouth speaks. Yeah. Right. So where do you keep your attention? Are you being wise and listening to sources that are going to be helpful, or are you listening to sources that are just going to tear you down and make you fearful of everything? Right.
Right. Well, I'm going to say I'm skinny 50 times a day. Maybe I will.
There you go.
Who knows? And so, I wanted to ask you too, dementia. Will you talk about dementia? Because
love to.
I'm seeing more and more and more and more of it.
Yes. Okay. So with dementia, again, that's just a word that we use. We make it call it a diagnosis, and we say here are the symptoms of it, right? But basically, any whether there's a physical injury or an emotional injury to your brain, you can develop an inflammation. So IL-6 are one of the inflammatory markers that create these proteins, and these proteins can gunk up certain areas of your brain.
Okay.
So here's what's really big. There's something called the glymphatic system with a G, right? We know about the lymphatic system in terms of draining your body when there's an infection and all the white blood cells kind of get drained through the system, and you have to move. And if you don't move, it won't drain. Well, there's a glymphatic system in your brain around the vasculature, the blood vessels in your brain, and that can get gunked up when you don't have quality sleep. So it's really important to have deep sleep, quality sleep. Number one. And number two, watch processed foods, because processed foods will also cause your system to really get gunked up. That's another piece. And then use your brain
Right.
puzzles and figure out stuff. And then lastly, movement is really important. And then I also mention water. The average person's not getting enough water, and we should be drinking about half of our body weight in ounces of water. So if I'm 200 pounds, let's say, I need to be drinking about 100 ounces of water a day.
Okay. Wow. So, TV is entertainment passive, right? So what's interesting to me is that a lot of seniors will just sit and watch TV, and it is it's crazy to me that they won't engage in more think games or think activities than just being passive entertainment. So we have a lot of people too probably making it worse on themselves than ever before.
That's totally, I completely agree. You got to move, right? So whether that is like, there's a Harvard study looking at ballroom dancing and how many calories you burn and how helpful that is to your cells. So finding a friend, your spouse, and family, and getting up and dancing and moving and walking is a big deal. But that also mitigates or decreases your risk of having depression. And we see that people over the age of 70, about 60 to 70% of those have some form of depression. And so that's why you want to get out into the sun. Infrared light's amazing. First thing in the morning, first hour in the morning, taking a 15-minute walk, or the last hour before the sun goes down, 15-minute walk. And then just and community's huge.
Okay. And so when it comes to metals in the body, which we probably have a lot of, how is that affecting the dementia, Alzheimer's boom in our generation and older? What's going on?
Totally agree. So metals and plastics. Okay. So all of that, we can, we get into geoengineering, and that's a huge thing. It's been around since I think the 50s. But and then our soil, we don't have the copper in our soil. Our soil isn't as rich either. So, so that's an issue. So I completely agree. Those metals and those substances create the inflammatory reactions and gunk up the system. So we have to take care of our glymphatic system, and the laughter, the exercise, the community, the water, watching processed foods. You should be going to like a market that's close to you, local grown foods, because they have less preservatives. Those are really, really important things. Another thing that's important is that there was a study done in the UK looking at people at early aggressive onset dementia. That is to say, they had dementia symptoms as early as in their like 45s or 40s. And they found that when they changed their diet to more of a ketogenic diet, so less carbohydrates, that it really helped to clear up their memory. So again, it's not to say that you got to have this strict fad diet, but look at all the processing of most of our breads, and so getting rid of some of those carbs makes a huge difference over time.
I think so too, because a lot of people are getting brain fog, and there's a lot of like products out there. Believe me, doing this 16 years, people sent me all kinds of products to take, and I would take them for a few months. If I didn't notice a difference, I would stop. And when you were talking about Cardio Miracle, that's the reason I talk about it on the show, is because it's made a big difference for my husband and I, which is something that I'm never going to talk about anything that I'm not taking myself. So Cardio Miracle, actually really good. I know there's a lot of products. You're probably scrolling and you're seeing all kinds of things. Everyone's promising you this ingredient or that ingredient, but Cardio Miracle has actually been the one where I've said this is like an all-in-one, which I rarely say that, because there were other products I was taking. This was actually on steroids. This was actually like 20 times of everything I was already doing, which made a huge difference. Like I said, never before were my numbers just normal. And I've been through 2 major deaths, and I'm going through 2 more people that are close to me, very close to me, dying. It's a very stressful year. And I'm telling you that my numbers should not be normal. If there was any year my numbers should not be normal, it's this year. And combined with the show stress and everything else. And so I appreciate you talking about that, because a lot of people do not understand that there actually is a product that's all in one. Like you can get so much from this product, then you're not taking 5 million things. So anyway.
Totally. Listen, you're preaching to the choir for real. I totally agree with you. I mean, and I give it to my kids.
Yeah.
And so that they don't take any other vitamins or supplements, and it's great. So I'm so
that nitric acid is so big. That is so important. And most people don't understand that. Can you give me a 2-minute overall on that? On the
So
nitric
basically,
acid?
nitric oxide is something that your blood vessels will secrete over the cellular layer. And there's a process. There's L-arginine and citrulline and ornithine. So these amino acids,
Okay.
and arginine. There's a protein that breaks down arginine and makes more nitric oxide. So when you're sick and then you develop inflammation, say from an infection or injury or even stressful thoughts, well, you secrete more nitric oxide. So you never want to run out of nitric oxide or arginine. And that's really the big piece. That's what it does is it handles stress and inflammation throughout your body and your brain. And so I would say that's kind of the biggest piece with a nitric oxide. Now, there are 3 different types of nitric oxide: eNOS, iNOS, and nNOS. And the eNOS is what we're speaking about. And the thing I liked about the nitric oxide is when you look at the data, it has where there's a high ratio of eNOS and a low ratio of any of the negative metabolites that come from, using this nitric oxide. And all the others, especially the ones that are in capsules, the beet, whatever, and all the other, those are so small. It's like, it is so minuscule. It's not even, it's like compared to this product. And that's the reason why it's in powder form, because it's so much higher concentration. And so it's really a game changer. And, and I appreciate John Hewlett and all that he's done to make this available to everybody. I mean, he wants to heal the hearts and brains of mankind, and he's doing it. So,
man, so good. So important. I really want people to get healthy and really for what's coming. I mean, if this is the one thing we're in charge of, like the one thing that we get to say yes or no to. So you get to control what you eat, what kind of doctor you go to, what you're taking, how many scripts you're taking. This is like the thing that people have control over. And so I remind people that, my gosh, if there's anything, please straighten out right now. It's your health, because I don't know what's coming, but it doesn't look good. And if you read the scriptures, it really doesn't look good. So please at least get that in order so you're not worried about it. Dr. Avery Jackson, neurosurgeon, really appreciate you. Thank you. I'll have you on again soon. The God Prescription is the book. It's right here, The God Prescription. Please go and check that out. It's really, really good. And he's going to answer so many questions that we didn't get to today. So I really appreciate you. Thank you. Just amazing, amazing stuff. Oh,
you're
my
welcome.
gosh. You bet. Thank you. So on to the rest of politics today. Oh, politics. So I really appreciated him coming on. There's a lot to talk about and digest in what he had to say, because I'm so serious about health. When I did that viral video when my husband was in the hospital, and they pretty much were like, he's going to die. And I said, no, he's not. And we just basically did a game plan where I had the frontline. I obviously had something going for me, and that was the frontline doctors were front and center in my life, and I'd been interviewing them. So I knew what to do, and I got great advice. And that was to give 10,000, whatever they are. I don't even know the cc's. I don't even know how you calculate that, but liquid, right? 10,000 vitamin C per day, because that's the limit they would give us, although you could go up to 25,000. And zinc and vitamin D. And then also budesonide is the steroid because it's safer. And then also ivermectin. So that's what my husband had. And he walked out of the ICU, stood up and walked a little bit before they slammed him back in a wheelchair, but in his flip-flops. But he walked out in 3 days and was out of the hospital in 5, and then was golfing on that night. So 5 days out, when they said he was going to die, he was golfing. And people saw that video. There was like 30 million people that saw that video. And I am telling you, it changed for people, because I realized that all throughout America, people were encountering the same thing. And that was that the doctors were telling you that you had to do the government protocol, because the government owned the hospitals at that point. And they were telling the hospital administrators, you do this and we give you a paycheck per person that's diagnosed with COVID. And then that's what that's the game. And so the hospital stupidly went along with it. And many, many doctors just went, yeah, I'm on board, without even questioning that. That scared me. So when I meet a doctor like Dr. Avery Jackson, it's like he gets it. He understands that the medical industry, the medical cabal has gone one way. And I love the fact that he is there to take a good approach about everything, because you just can't imagine how insane. After being in the hospital, that's when I realized, and maybe it happened for a reason, so I could help other people. My husband even said that. He said, I think I got sick because people needed to understand, like, he had pneumonia. He didn't have COVID. COVID's a label. It's a stupid hoax. But he had pneumonia. And guess what, folks? Back in the 1940s, they had done all these studies on pneumonia. And they said when we were giving up to 25,000 units of vitamin C a day, now this is important for you to remember for the future, if you get this, it was going away in 24 to 48 hours. That's insane. That's just by using vitamin C. They were curing pneumonia that fast. What does that tell you? So, yeah. So that's why we did that high dose. And then I knew it was intentional when after the hospital, when people were going in asking for the protocol that we used, they started outlawing it. And when I say outlaw, I mean sending a memo around saying that no one was allowed to order it anymore. You can't order a vitamin or a mineral in the hospital. Get that. Take that statement and let that ruminate for just a moment. No hospital was going to allow or this chain, a mineral or a vitamin being administered to anybody in the ICU. Yep. That's how sick people are. I'm serious. And they all went along with it. Okay. So I want to talk about this. Okay. This is a very interesting thing right here. This is the headline today. Could Putin use nukes? I'm sorry. Okay. Fear inside Kremlin. CIA has a bleak assessment. Oh, I'm sure they do for the headlines. Patriot missiles critically low. Why have we been using them? Oh, crickets. Yeah. Marine One radio scare. Remember how Dr. Jackson was just talking about fear, the fear that the AP sells us every day. Let me just tell you, in this article right here, could Putin use nukes? Okay, and he's all painted in red. Because why? Because red is the color of Russia. Communism. It says this, I kid you not. Fears are mounting that Russia could be considering using nuclear weapons in Ukraine as strikes between the two countries continue. Yes, remember I said that war was fake? It's fake. But anyway, sources close to the Kremlin told Bloomberg, just sources, you're supposed to believe that Vladimir Putin is hell-bent, what a word, is hell-bent on a new escalation after peace talks have reached a dead end. Really? Okay. So Russia would likely use tactical nuclear weapons, which are much less powerful than the bombs used on Hiroshima and Nagasaki, Japan, at the end of World War II. Yeah. Remember how those bombs were never used again, right? So he's going to use something less powerful. Why? Why not just use the full nuke? Why not do it? Yeah. Because they're lying. They're lying to you. I'm going to get to that in just a moment because I have some really good info for you on why I'm laughing at the fakery of all this and why the fakery is insane. Okay, so just a moment on that. Let me play the song for you, okay, that Elon has been playing. And I am purposefully not playing the video because I want you to really listen to what's being said. Elon is a CIA front, but he keeps pushing this song. It's called Sweet Land. It's put up by Heavy Pulp. Okay, here we go.
The garden's either dying or about to come alive. The river's either drying or it's deep enough to die. time. I don't know what's up ahead, but please, baby, don't you look behind. So tell me, is it gonna be free energy forever, or just the same damn old grind? Singing, sweet land of the weary and the wild. Are we 1 year from the grave, or is this just the beginning? My sweet child, oh, you're my star-spangled fever dream. Half a savior, half a liar. 250 summers and we're going higher.
Something's coming. Okay. I'm going to play the end for you. Okay, here we go.
Is these July going on, going on? Sweet land's going on, going on. Sweet land, going, gone.
Going, gone. Sweet land, they talk about America.
Please, just know that we can still rebuild. We can still make something better.
Well, hello, creepy song. So the whole song was about showing clips of all of the 50s, the 60s, the 40s, right, and nostalgia. And then it was all about selling us on the idea that something big is coming. And we keep getting all these grid escalating headlines, these grid problems. There was an executive order put out, but it's not actually affecting what's being spun out to every neighborhood in America. It was more about, oh, here's a warning for you. And the warning is that we're getting some of this equipment from foreign places who will do something to us. So therefore, this is what the executive order is for. So I'm just, what I sense is a big old setup. That's what I sense. It's a big old setup coming for a grid failure if they want to implement it. Okay. They're certainly setting it up. They're blaming Canada. Now we're naming Lake Ontario, Lake America. So they're doing really little ridiculous things. And I'm a conservative and I talk about both sides of the aisle. So no one's safe here because it's all screwy. And one of the things that this song was all about was something big is going on, but we're going to rebuild. Now, remember when I said that post AI, and I wrote an ebook on this so you can see what I'm talking about in more detail, but they have a new deal set for the future. And the new deal is coming in for the economy, and it is post AI. We are building AI. AI is not just a thing. We're actually the miners. We're building AI. Okay. And what happens after that is an income that is going to go to everybody. Okay. And Elon has been pushing this income and saying it's going to be the best thing ever. So they're talking about rebuilding. There's a lot of Q stuff in that, but they're talking about rebuilding after a significant event. And they're also talking about, what we had was great. We can get there again, whatever's coming. So if you Google 18 months worth of grid down, an 18-month grid down scenario, could they have that planned right now? Possibly, yes. They're certainly doing the setup for it, but they've done setup for other things too that I've notated on the show. So it doesn't necessarily mean it's going to happen, but they are setting it up if they want to choose for that to go down, and they want to choose for big excuses, and I lost my earpiece, excuses and scapegoat pieces to come into effect with this, okay? So they're setting up the lies or the scapegoat or the manufacturing of the event by blaming China, by blaming Canada, there's a lot of blame going on in this. And there's a couple of things that I want to address in this show today. And I think this is really important to kind of dial down. So maybe this will make a little bit more sense to you. Okay. So when it comes to nukes, the main piece that I want to talk about with you is, and I don't think I ever really did this on video. I did it on audio on the show, but I never really did it on video. So I want to talk about this, and then I want to talk to you why I tell you that it's not about Trump, because I want to explain myself in more detail, because I think people don't understand what I mean. Okay. So first of all, I want to go to nukes for just a moment. Okay. Spend a few minutes on this. The nukes are used to progress the agenda of fear. Nukes in the 20th century, the concept of, of this, the nuke is going to come get you. You have to hide under your desk in the 50s, and it's going to come get you in the 60s, then in the 70s. Everything that they were doing to take away and strip us of liberty ended up being because of the nuke threat. Okay. So, yeah, it's the fear has been used to justify the Cold War, which really wasn't about a Cold War. It was more about the brainwashing of America and the world. The Iraq War, now war with Iran, everything is about nukes. And this is why nukes is in the headlines right now. So this kind of gets a little interesting because, we have the one picture from, I think it was Jack Abey and his little 35 millimeter camera. You can look this up. And it's the only known well exposed color photograph of the detonation explosion. Remember, they just did a movie about it. Okay. The atom bomb. So, and believe me, it was up for an Oscar. So there's your big tell. But anyway, kind of interesting that there was only the one photograph, and it's blurry and it's far away. Okay. So when we're talking about nukes, don't you kind of wonder why terrorists have never actually gotten a hold of a nuke? Okay. Even in the piece written about Putin today, the major headline today, what is the headline all about? The headline is all about, he's going to use something less than. I'm like, why not just use it? Come on, let's show us what you got. So they're lying to you, because do they actually have nukes? Have you ever thought about that? Because whenever a fear has been used for 70 years as a fear that has never come to fruition, real terrorists, if you're a real terrorist, you would have nuked some city by now, right? Because you're just hell bent, right? Isn't that the word they use for Putin? Hell bent on terror. But that's never happened. Interesting. Remember we had ISIS with the fake white outfits and the fake white matching tennis shoes and the Toyota trucks? We have that kind of terrorism, but we don't necessarily have the kind where they actually get a hold of something, right? And really scare people and demolish people and kill people. So interesting. So as you're thinking about that, okay, and I'm sure you're thinking, well, I must be crazy to even mention that, because Kate, how can you, of course, it's like a given. This is a given in our society. Of course we have nukes. We've heard about it. We hid under our desks for it. We are, it's part of history. It's documented. Is it? Is it documented? Is it only documented by that one photograph? The one photograph? In New Mexico? Okay. So this is very, very interesting, because this bomb went down when Japan had already stated that they were surrendering, so we didn't need it for that. But they did need a fear tactic. They did need a fear tactic, and they needed something big, and they needed something that we would always, always be afraid of. Okay. So 1944, July, that song mentioned the Julys. Okay. July 1944. Nations drew up at the Bretton Woods Conference, the economic framework for the post-war world, agreement created by the IMF and the International Bank for Reconstruction and Development, pretty much BlackRock, but okay. And which later became part of the World Bank Group. Before Hudis died, Karen Hudis, I had her on the show talking about that. The Bretton Woods system lasted until 1973. Recovery began with the mid-1948 currency reform. remember, always a currency reform in Western Germany, sped up by the liberalization of European economic policy, that the U.S. Marshall Plan, right, the economic aid there. And so a lot of reshuffling of things happened, okay? But what's more, I think, interesting around this same time, because we didn't need a bomb to end the war, and I know a lot of people think that it's a complete and total lie. Even Japan was surprised. So, but 1945, right, the United States detonated 2 atomic bombs, is what they say, over the Japanese cities of Hiroshima and Nagasaki during World War II. And the aerial bombings, they say, killed between 150,000 and 246,000 people, most of whom were civilians. By the way, the ones that survived, they say they took them to Walter Reed. They did not take them to Japan, which would have been the obvious choice. That's a pretty broad number too. I can tell you from studying as many tens of thousands of hours as I've studied, that whenever they use broad numbers, they're lying. 150,000 to 246,000. Interesting. So very, very broad number. They don't know. Interesting. I mean, you could do a calculation. Anyway, so they said basically Japan announced its surrender on the 15th day of August, even though they had already contacted and done that earlier. And then, of course, on the 2nd of September, ending the war. Yeah. So basically, during the war, we had, well, there was a lot. So there was a lot going on. So let me take you back to this, because this is the one piece that really got to me when researching this. So we had the bombings, right? Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Okay. And there was a person that was actually on the ground looking at all of this and making sure, in the military, that was looking at the napalm chemical firebombing of these wooden Japanese cities was extremely destructive, right? This is what they tell us. And then Tokyo was hit, and so on and on. But what's interesting is they had U.S. Major Alexander P.D. Seversky. Okay, just look up Seversky, or D. Seversky, who in 1945 was sent to inspect the bombed towns of Japan. And here's his testimony. I'm going to say this again on video, so now it's on video. You can listen to a prior SoundCloud, but here we go. In Hiroshima, I was prepared for radically different sights when he went on the ground after the bomb. But to my surprise, Hiroshima looked exactly like all the other burned out cities in Japan. There was a familiar pink blot about 2 miles from the diameter. It was dotted with charred trees and telephone poles. Only one of the city's 20 bridges was down. Only one of the city's 20 bridges was down. Weird, right? You never get to hear about these details. Hiroshima's clusters of modern buildings in the downtown section stood upright. You mean they all didn't turn to dust? Strange. It was obvious that the blast could not have been so powerful as we have been led to believe. This is coming from a U.S. major, okay? It was an extensive blast rather than intensive. So extensive rather than intense, okay? He said, I had heard of buildings instantly consumed by unprecedented heat. Yet here I saw the buildings structurally intact. And what is more, topped by undamaged flagpoles, lightning rods, painted railings, air raid precaution signs, fragile objects. At the T-bridge, the aiming point for the atomic bomb, I looked for the bald spot where everything presumably had been vaporized in the twinkling of an eye. It wasn't there anywhere else. I could see no traces of the usual phenomena. What I did see was in substance of replica of Yokohama or Osaka or the Tokyo suburbs, the familiar residue of an area of wood and brick houses raised by uncontrollable fire. Everywhere I saw the trunks of charred and leafless trees, burned and unburned chunks of wood. The fire had been intense enough to bend and twist steel girders and to melt grass until it ran like lava, just as in these other Japanese cities that they firebombed, okay? So he said the concrete buildings nearest the center of the explosion of the atom bomb, some only a few blocks from the heart of the atom blast, showed no structural damage. Even cornices, canopies, and delicate exterior decorations were intact. Window glass was shattered, of course, but single panel frames held firm. Only window frames of 2 or more panels were bent and buckled. The blast impact, therefore, could not have been unusual. It was no different than any other firebomb that this gentleman had ever seen. Okay. So very interesting. And then John Boyce of the National Cancer Institute admitted that ionizing radiation is known to cause heritable, things that you can pass on, mutations in many species of plants and animals. But an intense study of 70,000 offspring of atomic bomb survivors has failed to identify an increase in congenital abnormalities, cancer, chromosome aberrations, and mutational blood protein changes. So that was very, very, very strange, was it not? In fact, there was a 40-year study. That 40-year study found that radiation exposure caused no genetic damage that could lead to human mutations. So was it present? Probably not. Probably not. So when you get into the eyewitness things, you're like, what in the world? What in the world? So what was it really? Because then why did they take everybody that survived this firebombing, as they had done in other cities, says U.S. Major Seversky, and why did they bring him to Walter Reed? Why not just bring him to the closest hospital? Doesn't make any sense, does it? Okay. So very strange that ever since then, even Tulsi Gabbard, interviewed her on the show, even Tulsi Gabbard was in a video talking about this event, but nothing since this event. So nothing has ever been utilized since. Doesn't anyone find that a little odd? Doesn't anybody out there find that a little strange? That no terrorists, no crazy terrorists. Why? Because they're all owned. That's why. But no crazy terrorist has ever gotten a hold of a nuke and nuked a city. And what do we say for 40 years? Iran's going to nuke us. I keep losing my earpiece. Sorry. Iran's going to nuke us. Iran's going to nuke us. And then what else do we say? We say Putin's going to nuke us. Putin's going to nuke us. Before, when I was on the air, probably 10 years ago, wasn't it? It was, I'm just going to take this one out. It was North Korea. North Korea is going to nuke us. Do you know how many people I know actually believe that? We could have put them out like an elephant stomp in 2 seconds, but people literally believed that we were going to get nuked by North Korea and it would end America or do significant damage. And I was like, yeah, that's not happening. Firebombing, sure, they'll take care of that. But do they actually have these atom bombs in that one picture of the mushroomy cloud? They have one photo for a government that likes to document things. I find that kind of interesting that there's one picture and it's very fuzzy. So this is kind of interesting. And I know somebody's saying that's not right. Japanese surrender after a second bomb. No, actually go look. They actually surrendered before the bombs were dropped. Go do some research. It's not hard. I do it every day. Yeah, they actually had already told the U.S. they were ready to lean back. Now we've been in a partnership with Japan ever since. Doesn't that surprise you? Did you know within a year of starting Microsoft, I think it was a year and a half, they had started a Japan branch? I'm serious. It's very weird, the relationship that we have with Japan. And Japan was doing more fierce things than the Nazis to people, more horrific things to people in torture than the Nazis were. And we basically just kind of took and kind of bought their stats, their information. Yeah, we didn't condemn them. We just took their info and for what? Research purposes? Anyway, so I bring this up because the feardom of this, look at today's headline. Look at the headline with Iran every day. It's nukes, 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 nukes. I mean, my gosh, I mean, does it get any weirder than this? Seriously. So let me just tell you, 2014, Putin, Russia military modernization to go ahead. We had Poland risks attack because of U.S. missiles. That was 2008. We have, I mean, you could go all the way back. Moscow may have to target Europe in 2007. That was the headline by the AP, the lying scumbaggery of the AP News. They lie every single day to us. They're scumbags over there. Putin's path, the pledges of stability to nuclear threats, that was 2022. 2024, Putin warns that sending Western troops to Ukraine risks a global nuclear war. Well, why didn't he just do it then? I mean, because it's a fake war. They're building up Ukraine as a smart country. That's why. Zelensky announced it. Little puppetry, Zelensky announced it. So 2024, Russia flaunts doomsday weapons to keep the West from brandishing the nuclear sword. I mean, don't you just love all the wording they're using? I did a show where I went through so many headlines going all the way back like 40 years. I mean, it was just insanity over what they're going to come do to us. And this ongoing threat, when you have an ongoing threat this long, something's wrong. Something's wrong with the narrative. Look into the narrative, because nothing's ever happened in this way. So do they have that capability? Probably not. And then go look at Seversky's account, because it has pretty much gotten buried by media. They won't even mention it. So yeah. Yes. And by the way, the bombing planners drawing their science of mass killing first spread incendiary material to prep the target. And this soaked kindling that would have been lit like a match with a small high-flying fleet of B-29s. That's how you can explain Hiroshima. This makes it possible to destruct the target with even less than 66 aircraft, and would make it highly contained and controlled operation. So we note the absence of the mushroom cloud photos from the ground in Japan. It's here, but with the one picture that we have, but not over there. So the other ones have been CGI'd when they try to, just like the moon, they try to get Earth, they try to give us a CGI. So among one of the very few photos of the Hiroshima bombing that do exist, the following three suggest a raging firestorm, not a nuclear explosion. And the photos appear consistent with others shot at different distances and angles. And these firestorms were also described at Hamburg in 1943, Dresden in 1945, and then other various Japanese incinerations of 1945. Okay. There's a book called Osada's, almost like Osama, right? Osada's Children of the A-Bomb. A survivor describes a scene that is altogether different from the A-bomb, stating, this book is called Osada's Children of the A-Bomb, if you want to read it. It says, I looked up to the sky, a streamer of smoke, perhaps 50 yards high, rising from the center of Hiroshima and about 2 miles distance. At the top of the column of the smoke was a ball of fire, which seemed to me to be about the size of a large oil tank. So I'm just going to rest it right there. When something is used, it ain't true. When something is used forever as a narrative, it ain't true. Okay? That's just how it goes. And I think that if we were a smarter populace, not brainwashed, as the true goal of the intelligence racket, we would have probably been asking more questions about this so-called mushroom cloud and the one photo we have, the very fuzzy photo. And we would have asked more questions to the people that survived the firebombing, I would imagine. So, okay. If anything translates into a firebombing of any cities in America, I would imagine it would be intelligence doing it, our own guys doing it. It would never be a foreign country. Because why? Because we could squash anyone like a bug. That's why we have like 600 times the power over any other nation. And so when they act weak and we act like there's the boogeyman, we can't control them. It's BS. It's complete and utter bullshit. That's what it is. So sorry, but we squash anyone like a bug. It's so obvious, I think, and it should be at this point. It should be so obvious to us what's happening to us brainwashing wise, but it's not yet. So we got to keep working with this. Okay. So I did tell you I would talk about, I know Dolly Parton died. I know everyone wants to talk about Dolly Parton. Was she part of the club? She was a good songwriter. Yes, she was part of the club. They're all part of the club. You don't get Kennedy honors and, a possible Nashville airport named after you and the burgeoning of a Dolly Day and the flag at half mast all across the country. What? First time for an entertainer like that. So yeah, she's part of the club. Sorry. I like her too. I thought she was funny. Thought she was adorable. Who doesn't? But she's part of the club. Oh my gosh, people. She's part of the club. I don't know what else to say. I think that one's pretty obvious too, but that's just me. Okay. So I want to talk about something that I've said on the show, but maybe I need to be a little bit more direct. Maybe I need to be a little more, this is what I mean. Okay. I'm a conservative. Most people would typically say I'm on the right. Okay. I loathe the Republican Party and think it's completely demonized, full of demons is really my executing of that word. So is the left. Okay. Both sides are so corrupt and so disgusting and so evil that I can't even tell you how even my state of Utah has been taken over by the worst of the worst of the worst people that you'll ever meet in politics. Okay. That claim to be Republican and claim to be conservative. They're not. They're about as woke as you can get. I have a hard time with the woke because I just see ignorance and arrogance. So it's hard for me to deal with that group of people too. I don't like what they stand for. I don't like where they stand morally. I have a hard time with it. I really do. Murder's murder. I have a really hard time with all of the narratives of the left. On the right, I think we're extremely gullible. And we do believe someone's coming to save us because we don't want to have to do the hard work. And the hard work would be the people coming together to save our country. But we're not going to do it because we have been brainwashed into thinking someone's going to save us. So here was a comment from an influencer with over 1 million people. And I want to read this to you. A friend of mine showed this to me and I was like, okay, I have an answer to this. I believe Trump, this is their comment. I believe Trump has been part of the deep state for a long time. His plan appears to have been win the first term, lose the second, under suspicious circumstances, then win the third, all designed to build intense personal loyalty. Now, they don't say why. They just say he wanted to build personal loyalty. Then they say the incident in Butler that he has refused to allow a full independent investigation into that fits this pattern for me. By the way, on a side note, I said Butler was a scam from the second it happened, and I got on the air and I got pummeled by my own. They were so, how dare I had people not follow me anymore. They were so angry and I'm like, this one's really obvious. Are you sure you believe this one? Okay. So it was a false flag. It was a false flag to build martyrdom. But people just freaked out when I said that. They literally freaked out. Okay. But that's okay because I'm used to freaking people out, I guess. So I'm going to go on with her statement. Okay. In my view, we were all had. Trump's ultimate role seems to be ending America as we know it and helping usher in a new world order with Israel in a leadership position. Part of that's true. Okay. So then she says, I fell for all of it. I worked hard to get him elected in 2016, 2020, and 2024. I became a national delegate for him in 2024. I attended 42 rallies. I walked the halls of Congress for him 3 times, organized Trump car parades. I did everything I could think of to support him. The entire time, it looks to me like his real goal was enriching his family and friends. That's an interesting statement. I think he doesn't care about the midterms because the plan is for us to be in a world war, which he can suspend elections like Zelensky, and that will be the end of America as we know it. I write this as a warning to everyone and as an apology for my participation in what I see now as a horrid game of deceit. Okay, so let me ask you this. Reading this statement from somebody on X, okay, with a massive following. What is she trying to get you to do? Right now, what is she trying to get you to do? Because this is very, very, very important. Okay. So Joe says 100%. No, you're wrong. Stop being an idiot. You're wrong. Listen, that was a comment coming in on YouTube. It isn't right. And you're being brainwashed. And let me tell you how and why. Okay. Okay. On the show, I have said, I like Trump, but you need to realize it's not about Trump. Okay. And I have said this so repeatedly since 2022 when I forecasted that he would be chosen for president because the media was telling us that he would be chosen for president. It's much more selected than anybody thinks. Okay. So in this statement, what I get from her statement, okay, and please start thinking and stop just listening to media, because I can always tell when somebody has zero brain power and just listens to media. Okay. They just consume it and then it forms their opinions and perspective. So is Trump a nice guy? Actually, yes. I have a lot of friends that are close to Trump. I get to hear about lots of things that he does, lots of things that he extends to people that really help them, that he's a nice person. Okay. And the reason I say that isn't because I can't identify everything that's going on. It's because if you're going to talk about Trump, you're being so do you guys remember Deal or No Deal? Deal or No Deal was a show where actually I think they were prostituting the women on the show, but no one really realized that. That's a whole nother show. But what I was going to say was at the end, if you got high enough in the game, Trump was the prize. So you got to do a deal with Trump, whatever. Okay, so Trump would come on with a briefcase. Okay. Everyone liked him. There was a reason people liked him and his employees liked him and his family liked him and everyone liked him. Okay. Is because he was a pretty genuine, nice guy. And this is why I say it's not about Trump. So the problem with this isn't in this statement, what she's trying to say is Trump is the reason. Trump is who you should take all your frustrations out on. Trump was deceitful. Trump did this. Trump did that. It's all Trump. Okay. Everything is about Trump. I did this for him. I did that for him. And now he's deceitful and he got me to work for him. And now it's all for his personal loyalty or personal, what did she say? Personal loyalty and for enriching his family and friends. Okay. So what is the ongoing conversation in America? The woke, the brainwashed, they go, he's a Nazi. He's terrible. He's from Satan. He's a rapist. He's evil, blah, 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 blah. All I ever hear. Gee, has the media brainwashed you much? You're even using the word Nazi because that's the worst name you could use. Okay. Then on the right, you have the savior complex. They see him as a martyr. They see him as somebody that is trying, but the left just keeps doing all this to him. I don't see either one of those sides. What I see is a very controlled presidency where now the influencers right now are trying on the right, okay, right and left, but the right is more of a subversive kind of lie. Okay, so what they're trying to do is they're trying to get you to have all your blame and all your hate fall on Trump. Trump did this, Trump did that. Trump is the new world order. Trump. But don't look at who's behind Trump. I mean, it's brilliant. It's brilliant because people are going, yeah, and he introduced the coin and that coin's going to be used and blah, blah, blah. And we're changing yeah. And I said the reason they were going to put Trump in was because he would be very useful in giving us AI that was going to result in universal basic income. That's the result of AI that they're not telling you. We were going to have war. We have massive war budget, bigger than ever. We were going to continue the NSA spying. We were going to go into digital ID. we were going to go into total control. And so it would make us complacent. So right now, your comments on social media, anyone that suddenly crops up and has this million soul audience, okay, they attribute 1 million people. Boy, how'd they get that? Their whole goal is to say, I'm a Republican and I was under this bait and switch and I am now angry at Trump. So all focus on Trump and obviously hate on Trump. So the left already hates him. They don't even know why they hate him, but they've been told by media who loves to brainwash them and they listen to anything CNN says. He's a Nazi and a rapist. Okay. So they all they can do is just spin out those words because they're so angry at Trump. Okay. And then on the right, there's a slow tide of turning going on. The slow tide, the slow turn going, oh, I'm a Republican, now I'm denouncing him. I'm a Republican, now I'm denouncing him. Do you see? It's never going to be on the people that are actually running the show and selecting the presidents. It's never going to be on the people that are in the think tanks that are running the foreign policy, because I assure you that Trump is not. I assure you that the presidency has zero power. This is like arguing over the wrestling match. Which character do you like the most? Which character is the most important to you? And which one do you just kind of loathe because they're the bad guy? And which one do you like because they seem like you want to go to lunch with them, like Obama, like, oh, he's such a statesman. I'm like, so him and his fake history. So I'm like, listen, if you really see it, if you're really awake, okay, you can see what she's doing and you can see what all these other influencers are doing. They want all and every amount of your energy to go on Trump and not to who's actually running the country, which is intelligence are really running it, but it's the people behind intelligence that are calling the shots. They don't want you to get angry at that. They don't want you to see the fakery of the nukes. They don't want you to see the fakery of the fear. They don't want you to see the fakery that is going on every day. And that is, why in the world are we freaking talking about changing the name of Lake Ontario? Now, I know for the woke, they're going to jump on this and go, see, Trump, icky. I'm like, please grow a brain cell, more than a brain stem, okay? Grow a brain and figure out that it is not about that. He takes orders, and the orders are, you're going to get the press to talk about the change in Lake Ontario to Lake America. Just like you were there to tell us to change Gulf of Mexico to Gulf of America. It has nothing to do with anything. Now, the only real part of that is that we're turning into a region where our constitution will not matter after a certain point in time. We're turning into a region. We're making ourselves a big land mass between Mexico and Canada and Greenland. That's why all the chatter about it for the last year. But what I'm trying to tell you is if you are embroiled into Trump's a Nazi, you're one of the most stupidest people. If you are a person that goes, Trump's going to save us, and yeah, he's renaming lakes, but he's really got a plan, and that plan's going to come to fruition in a few years, and Q was right, and it's coming, and the white knights are. You're stupid too. You're an idiot. I'm sorry, but you're a total moron. This is about hiding in plain sight behind the structure of the president and the power of the president. The president has not had power for over 100 years. They are mechanisms of, yes, the New World Order. I'm going to use that term. Yes, they are mechanisms of it. They're useful show ponies. They take the orders. So while everyone is stewing over Trump, I have people on the right going, we've been lied to. I'm like, you were lied to for 100 years. Like, both sides are on this. Both sides are in this. There are no sides in Washington. The presidential power has nothing but what he is told to do. This is all directive. So where should your anger be? At the show pony puppet in the theater, or the person that masterminded the play? Should it be toward the people writing the script? writing the play. So when you get mired into Trump talk, whether he's saving us stupidly or whether he's destroying us stupidly, he's not doing anything. He's just the person signing. It's the people behind him making these damn decisions. But you know what? They're masterful at saying, don't look here. Don't look here. They're masterful at it. It doesn't matter whether he was in the Epstein files. There's lots of Epsteins, okay? The Epstein files are never all going to come to fruition. It's a distraction. They've got lots of people in Epstein's position, okay? No one in the Senate or House is not compromised, okay? They're all compromised, okay? Everything Biden did, everything Trump has done, everything Trump did in the first thing, that was all caught up in Russiagate, okay? On purpose. It wasn't a thing. It was a made up manufactured thing. So what they're trying to do is get the right to say, I have been bamboozled. And then, of course, it's so easy to get the left, like just saying words that you can tell that the media has told them. Whenever somebody says he's a Nazi or a rapist, I'm just like, so you've been listening to the media a lot? So because they're so easily brainwashed, because they actually believe that the media is the media. They haven't been the media for 100 years. So look at who's actually doing it. Be angry at who's doing it, okay? Stop getting into their trap. You're being drawn into a trap. And the trap is you will hate who we tell you to hate and when we tell you to hate. And you're doing it. You're doing it. People on the right are paid to bring you misinformation, to bring you into emotion just like the left, okay? And that is arrogance on top of ignorance. So they don't study history. They don't look 5 meters ahead. They are very much people that are in the moment and into the emotion. And if they're taught to hate somebody, by golly, they will hate somebody. The media is so good at it. They paint about 180 to 200 adjectives in every AP article known to man. Okay. Every AP article that's come out is pasted with adjectives to teach you how to feel. Okay. And here's the problem. People on the right and the left aren't blaming the right person or team behind the writing of the script and the play. They're blaming the actor. Go blame the people writing the script. Trump will do what he's told to do. And he'll be told that if he's not aware, he'll be told there are reasons for what he's doing that never amount to anything. If he is aware, which I think by the time you're in the second time, you got to be aware. But anyway, look, it's all a ginormous play. So the only way that we change all of this is to see through the fear, the nuke lie, all the lies, the Iran lie. We own Iran. I'll say it again. We own Iran. We own Putin. We have for a long time. That's why Putin never gets very upset. Putin's part of the club. They're all part of the club. Even Xi's part of the club. So look, this is all feardom. It's all a game. And if you're not noticing it, you're not asking enough questions and you're not curious enough. I don't know what else to say to you other than please do more research, because when you research history, you can see it so clearly. That's all I do is research history. You can see it so clearly because it's so obvious. Okay. You can't steal an election like, like Biden did, right? So by he didn't steal it. They just put him in. Okay. So you can't do that and then have 2024 be a normal election. So the software changed in 2004 and they've been, the party puts in who the party wants according to what the deep state wants. So it's for whatever agenda is coming. That's why I think that you'll see another Republican in for the next term, probably JD or Marco. Oh, they're both owned. They're both part of the racket. And you'll see that because it's going well. See, there's not a lot of pushback because everybody thinks that we're getting saved, even though we're not. So I'm just saying again on the show that this is something that is so hard to see because you can say, you can become part of the club where you are trained to hate who the media and the government train you to hate. Are you a trained lapdog or are you not? Are you a thinking American or are you a trained lapdog? Your choice. If you can't see Trump for the part that he sees playing and for the theatrics of all of this, this is why they have like congressmen, this congressman said this congressman said this about him. I mean, back and forth, back and forth. It's like days of our lives every day. That's all by design. It's all by design. And it's the reason that even a year and a half in, we're not getting anywhere. We're not doing anything. We're not getting any liberty back. We're just losing it to data centers and everything else. And the reason is because the one agenda moves forward. That's why we're doing stupid things like Gulf of America and Lake America and blah, blah, blah. They're turning us into a region. They're building data centers that are not for data. They are not for data. Okay. The bait and switch is on. Okay. When you want to build something in plain sight in every city in America, when you could go use federal vast lands to do it, empty vast lands, even the Sahara has fiber. Okay, when you can do it anywhere you want, but you choose to do it in the heart of every city, you're being bait and switched. Okay, it is not for data. They do not need them now. They don't even need them now. Okay, so you got to start thinking about that. And getting more curious about all of this, getting more curious about nukes, the nuke fear. The nuke fear has been going on 70 years. When are we going to wake up? How long is it going to take? Are we that stupid? Yes, we are. We are that stupid. We'll just keep going. There's a nuke coming. You don't think by now it would have surfaced? You don't think somebody would have tried something? Come on. We're not that dumb, are we? Maybe we are. Never mind. Okay, I'm going to go out with this song. By the way, go get the ebooks. It explains what I'm talking about with AI, what the true bait and switch of AI is. Elon's even talked about it, but nobody in the press, right or left, has mentioned it out loud. Yeah, it's bad out there, you guys. Also, go to katetalks.myshopify.com. It supports the research and supports free speech, since I'm one of the very, very last to actually have free speech. I'm one of the last not owned media in the entire country. How sad is that? So, yeah, anyway, that and also go get Cardio Miracle, because that's the one product I've just really loved this year. So it's been a game changer for my husband and I, and we love it. Cardiomiracle.com. You'll start feeling it right away. I get so many comments about that in email, and I really appreciate you taking the time to write me and tell me what it's done for your life. So cardio and your health, cardiomiracle.com/Kate. You have 30 days to try it out. Go try it out. Okay. Be faithful, be fearless, and I will see you back here.
The kind of sweet as these July.
Something's coming. I wonder what it is. Anyway, all right, you guys. Take care. Have a good weekend.